Sarah gets shot in Outer Banks. What really happened? Warning, major spoilers. Sarah Cameron does get caught in a dangerous shooting situation in Outer Banks, but she survives Season 5. Her story ultimately ends happily. She gives birth to her baby with John B., and the couple later gets married. So, what really happens when Sarah gets shot in Outer Banks? Sarah has probably survived more dangerous situations than almost anyone else in the Pogues. She's been kidnapped, attacked, nearly drowned, and repeatedly caught between enemies who want to hurt her family. So when Sarah is caught in another life-threatening situation in Season 5, it's completely understandable that fans wondered whether this could finally be the moment she dies. But the answer is no, Sarah survives. And the shooting is not the event that ultimately determines her fate. Why is Sarah in danger? By Season 5, the Pogues are already dealing with the consequences of JJ's death. JJ was killed by his biological father, Chandler Groff, at the end of Season 4. That loss completely changes the group. Sarah, John B., Kiara, Pope, and Cleo aren't simply chasing another treasure anymore. They want revenge. At the same time, they're still pursuing the Blue Crown and trying to recover the Royal Merchant treasure. That puts them directly in the path of people who are willing to kill to get what they want. Sarah is especially vulnerable because she's pregnant with John B.'s child. So every dangerous situation carries an additional risk. She's no longer fighting only for herself. She's fighting for her unborn baby, too. Does Sarah actually get shot? Sarah is caught in the violence surrounding the Pogues, but she is not killed by a gunshot. This distinction matters because some of the promotional material and intense action sequences make it look as though Sarah could suffer the same fate as other major characters. But Season 5 doesn't end Sarah's story that way. The finale confirms that Sarah survives the season. She eventually gives birth to her baby and later marries John B. So if you're worried that Sarah's apparent shooting means she dies, you can relax. Sarah survives. What happens to Sarah's baby? This is actually the bigger question surrounding Sarah's fate. Sarah revealed her pregnancy at the end of Season 4. That immediately made every dangerous situation in Season 5 much more frightening. The Pogues are running from enemies, they're traveling through dangerous locations, they're dealing with storms, and Sarah is trying to survive while pregnant. At one point, her physical condition becomes particularly concerning because she suffers from severe dehydration. But she ultimately makes it through the pregnancy. Sarah gives birth to a healthy baby, and she and John B. name the child JJ in memory of their late friend. So the shooting and the other dangers don't result in Sarah losing her baby. She becomes a mother. Why is JJ's name so important? The name is one of the most emotional details of the ending. The original JJ Maybank is gone. His death is one of the defining tragedies of the final season. Kiara especially struggles to accept his death. The Blue Crown even creates the possibility that JJ might somehow return. But the series ultimately doesn't undo his death. Instead, his memory survives. Sarah and John B. naming their child JJ is a way of keeping their friend connected to the Pogue family. The new baby isn't literally the old JJ, he's a completely different person. Does John B. save Sarah? John B. remains Sarah's biggest source of support throughout the final season. Their relationship has survived almost everything Outer Banks has thrown at them, and the pregnancy makes their bond even stronger. They're no longer simply teenage lovers caught up in treasure hunts. They're preparing to become parents. When Sarah is in danger, John B.'s priority is getting her to safety. Their relationship ultimately survives the final battle, the treasure hunt, and the hurricane. And that's important because the series has repeatedly separated them and then brought them back together. Season 5 finally gives them stability. What happens during the finale? The final episodes become increasingly chaotic as Hurricane Cassandra approaches. Groff has stolen the Royal Merchant gold and is attempting to escape. The Pogues are trying to survive the storm while also stopping him. Kiara eventually confronts Groff and kills him, finally getting revenge for JJ. Meanwhile, John B. and Sarah are involved in the effort to save their friends. The storm puts everyone in danger. Sarah is once again forced into a situation where she could potentially die. But she survives. The Pogues eventually make it through the hurricane, and the Royal Merchant Gold ends up belonging to them. That's when the tone of the story finally changes. The danger is over, the treasure hunt is finished, and the Pogues can finally start building normal lives. Does Sarah die in the finale? No, this is worth making completely clear because the final season contains several fake-outs. Sarah is alive after the final confrontation. She survives the hurricane, she survives the treasure hunt, she survives the pregnancy, and she appears in the final time jump. The finale jumps forward after her baby is born. Sarah and John B. are together, and they're raising their child. So whatever happens during the shooting sequence, it does not become Sarah's final fate. What happens to Sarah and John B.? They get the ending many fans expected from the beginning of the series. They become parents. Then they get married. The final time jump shows Sarah and John B. celebrating their wedding at the rebuilt chateau surrounded by their friends and family. Their baby JJ is also there. It's an enormous contrast to the early seasons. At the beginning of Outer Banks, Sarah and John B. are teenagers running around trying to solve mysteries and find treasure. By the end, they're married adults with a child. The creators have said they knew for a long time that they wanted the series to end with John B. and Sarah's wedding. What about Rafe? Sarah's relationship with Rafe also reaches an emotional conclusion. Rafe's past eventually catches up with him. After his involvement in Sheriff Peterkin's death becomes known, he has to flee the Outer Banks with Sophia. Before leaving, Rafe says goodbye to Sarah. He apologizes for everything. Sarah accepts the apology, and the siblings embrace. It's an important moment because their relationship has been defined by violence and resentment for years. Rafe knows he may never return to the Outer Banks, and that means he probably won't get to meet Sarah and John B.'s baby. Netflix describes their goodbye as one of the most emotional moments of the finale. Sarah therefore survives, but she doesn't get to keep everyone she loves close to her. Why doesn't Sarah die? From a storytelling perspective, Sarah's survival is important because her character's arc is about building a new life. Sarah began the series trapped inside a dysfunctional wealthy family. Her father manipulated her. Her relationship with Rafe became destructive. She eventually chose John B. and the Pogues. But even after making that choice, she was constantly dragged back into danger. Her pregnancy represents the future she never had before. If Sarah died, the story would end on another tragedy. Instead, the writers choose to let her survive and finally create the family she wanted. That's why the final image of Sarah isn't one of her fighting, it's one of her celebrating. What is Sarah's final fate? Sarah's final fate is surprisingly peaceful considering everything she's been through. She survives the final adventure. She gives birth. She raises her child with John B. She rebuilds the chateau with him, and 1 year later, they get married. The Pogues also finally use the Royal Merchant Gold to improve their lives. John B. restores his childhood home. Kiara buys JJ's old property. Pope and Cleo build their future together. And the group creates a memorial for JJ. The treasure that caused so much chaos throughout the series finally becomes something that allows the Pogues to build rather than destroy. Final answer. So, what really happened when Sarah gets shot in Outer Banks? Sarah is caught in the dangerous violence surrounding the Pogues during Season 5, but she does not die. Her apparent shooting or injury is another terrifying moment in a season filled with situations where the characters could easily lose their lives. But Sarah survives. More importantly, her baby survives too. She successfully completes her pregnancy and gives birth to a healthy baby, whom she and John B. named JJ in honor of their late friend. The finale then jumps forward, showing Sarah and John B. married at the rebuilt chateau with their child. So Sarah's story doesn't end with a tragedy. It ends with the opposite. After 5 seasons of running from danger, losing people, and fighting for treasure, Sarah finally gets a future. She's no longer simply Ward Cameron's daughter. She's no longer the girl constantly caught between the kooks and Pogues. She's a wife, she's a mother, and she's finally living the life she chose. The shooting is therefore another reminder of how close Sarah comes to losing everything. but she survives it. And the fact that she survives makes the final wedding scene even more meaningful. Sarah and John B. have spent years fighting just to stay together. Now they don't have to run. They don't have to chase another treasure. And they don't have to wonder whether the next adventure will separate them. They have their son. They have their home. And they have each other. Sarah survives. Her baby survives. And after everything Outer Banks put her through, Sarah finally gets her happy ending.